Oh, good morning, everyone. So, today I want to start off with something that I do every semester, which is talking a little bit about how you can improve the efficiency of your work. Primarily your programming work, because that's what we're talking about in this class, but really anything that you're working on. You may have noticed that I'm playing this game Cookie Clicker. The reason I'm playing it is because it's a good example of the sort of idea that I want to talk about, which is the idea of being able to do things that provide upgrades to how efficient what you're accomplishing is. So as I click this cookie, it's getting me more cookies, and then I can spend cookies to buy upgrades. For example, this upgrade here says that every time I click on the cookie, or every time I buy another one of these cursors, which automatically clicks on the cookie, it's going to be twice as expensive. So by doing this, I'm using some resources. It's costing me 100 of the cookies that I've collected, but now the process of getting more cookies becomes more efficient. So in the medium to long term, I'm going to accomplish more in the same amount of time, even though I had to spend some time getting a resource that I would then spend to make my future time use more efficient. So what does that have to do with programming, you might ask? Well, so there's a bunch of things that you can do as a programmer which will immediately make you more efficient, sort of in the same way as upgrades in Cookie Clicker make getting cookies more efficient. An easy example of that is touch typing. Now, if this were an in-person class, I would poll the class now and ask how many people know how to touch type. And usually the result I get from that question is that about a quarter of the class, maybe 20% of the class, will raise their hand and say they can touch type, but the significant majority of the class doesn't know how to touch type, even though this is a computer science class, and every single student in the class needs to type in order to be able to complete their homework assignments, and will almost certainly need to type in order to be able to complete tasks in their future career. Now, touch typing is an interesting thing to analyze. So, without touch typing, just two-finger typing or whatever sort of ad hoc method people come up with, you can frequently get so that you can type 30 words per minute. With a little bit of practice, touch typing can get you to 60 words per minute. So it's not like touch typing is sort of making you 10 times faster, but it does mean that when you are trying to type text into the computer, whether it be English text or a computer program, the time that you're spending typing, you're doing it twice as fast as a touch typist. And further, especially when we're talking about programming, most of the time that you're spending programming isn't typing. Let's say 90% of time programming isn't typing. It's probably even more than that, but I'm just going to make up numbers so that I can do misleading arithmetic with them. Ooh, an upgrade in Cookie Clicker. This one's going to make things twice as efficient again, and suddenly I'm getting cookies relatively quickly without actually even clicking to play the game. Cookie Clicker is great. But in any case, we have this scenario where you're trying to program, 90% of the time isn't typing, and so we're considering an upgrade that is going to make it so that for 10% of your time, is cut in half. And rather than actually doing the math, I'm going to do the incorrect math, which is still an okay approximation. Maybe touch typing, maybe learning to touch type will speed up your programming tasks by 5%. That doesn't sound that great. On the other hand, if you think about how much time you're going to spend doing homework just in this class, I expect that over the next 12 weeks, you're going to be spending at least 6 hours a week doing programming homework. So 6 hours a week times 12 weeks is going to be 72 hours. So a 5% speed up, we're looking at you may end up spending more than 6 hours a couple weeks. Let's just round up to 100. So we're talking about just in this class, touch typing would save you 5 hours. Right? Now, whether or not you want to go and spend a bunch of time on Mario typing or Mavis Beacon or whatever right now is an interesting trade-off. Maybe you don't have the time this week to put in the 20 or 40 hours it takes to really go from being a two-finger typist to a touch typist. But on the other hand, you can sort of get started on it with just 5 hours or 10 hours, and then just be careful and use all your fingers when you're typing and get up to speed a little slower. And it might not pay off immediately this semester, but over the course of the next 10 years that you spend in school and then working a job where whether or not you are programming, you're definitely going to be spending a good chunk of your time sitting in front of your computer. This upgrade is a really good deal, just like getting the upgrades in Cookie Clicker is a really good deal. Real world upgrades aren't quite as good as Cookie Clicker, but you still want to do them, and you want to do them as soon as possible, because they're sort of a multiplicative effect. If we can find two things that are a 5% upgrade, that multiplies together and you're getting more than 10%. So other upgrades. Touch typing is a really obvious one, but there are other upgrades that we can consider. How about spending some time learning and configuring a powerful text editor? You're spending a ton of time in your text editor when you're programming, and the difference between editing text, editing computer programs, in a text editor that just sort of minimally lets you enter text, and one that has proper syntax highlighting, does automatic indentation, maybe has a key command that lets you do syntax checks, whatever features you think are useful, is going to be significant. I'm not going to make any estimate on how much it's going to speed you up, but you'll find that a lot of people who do professional programming have spent hours and hours on the text editor configuration and think that they got a good deal. Now, I'm not necessarily convinced by everything that might look like an upgrade. Personally, I try to avoid any editor that will like auto-complete code for me. This seems really tempting, especially if you're programmed in Java, and you get these situations where you like press period and it will pop up all the methods on the object that you are saying that you want to call a method on or access a field on. And that really is tempting, but knowing what the methods are by having spent time studying your standard library seems like a better deal to me. On the other hand, I don't write a lot of Java. I work more in languages where like how to do that sort of autocomplete in a way that even seems useful would be a little bit less obvious, like C, for example, in this class. But it's still, if you think it might be an upgrade, it's worth evaluating, even if you decide that that particular thing doesn't end up being worthwhile. So I don't like autocomplete, but if you think it might be good, go take the time and see if you can get your editor to do it better. One thing that I would recommend is an editor that is keyboard focused. Grabbing the mouse when you're trying to edit text slows you way down. You have to move your hand all the way over to the mouse. Then when you get your hand back, you have to get back on the home row or however you're typing. There's a reason why Vim and Emacs have been popular for decades now, like more than 2 decades. And that is that the sort of keyboard focus of an editor is a useful thing. As I mentioned, another one that we can talk about is becoming familiar with your programming language and its standard library, rather than having to like autocomplete and then try to find the documentation or go look up how to sort an array. You should know where's the sort function or method, what are the arguments for it, how do we change the sort order. That's just stuff that you should know if you're using a language or development environment a lot. Another one that is especially applicable to this class is learning the debugger that goes with the development environment that you're using. For us, that's GDB. But if you're doing C# programming, that's going to be the integrated debugger in Microsoft Visual Studio. If that's the thing that you're spending time using, then you should spend some time making sure you know how to use it as well as possible, because it's a powerful tool. The reason I bring up this question of workflow upgrades in this particular class, computer systems, is that it's a little bit too early to bring it up in Fundies 1 or Fundies 2, but first semester sophomore year is a time where you know whether you're planning to go on with programming or sitting in front of a computer for the next couple decades. And right now, if you start spending time looking for these upgrades and then investing the time to take advantage of them, the payoff period will be maximized. If you have the choice between evaluating whether you want to learn Vim and spending a week getting really good with Vim, not the whole week, but just when you're editing text, make sure to do it in Vim. When you're not sure how to do something, make sure to go find out the right way to do it, rather than just sort of trying to find a way to get it to work. Try to find the good way to do it. If you do that now, that's going to have a potentially much higher payoff than waiting until you have a job 5 years from now where you're like sort of more forced to do it. So you should constantly be looking for these upgrade opportunities, and it's of course a trade-off whether you want to invest in the upgrade or optimize so that you're accomplishing your immediate tasks. But I would recommend getting as many upgrades as you can as soon as possible, because that's the way to get the best outcome long term.